items. On Nasus, you pretty much just want a rush cooldown reduction. We are finished picks and bans here. So on blue team, they've banned out Leona, Mundo, and Wukong. And then they've picked up what I'm assuming is... Okay, this is a weird team comp. I'm going to take a guess as to the roles and who's playing what. I'm assuming that is a Kha'Zix mid... I'm assuming they're not trading, honestly. I'm going to say it's a Kha'Zix mid, Olaf top, Vayne AD carry, Pantheon jungle, and Volibear support. The reason I'm thinking that is because that sort of fits the champions. Like, they can all do those roles. They're not amazing at them, but they can function in those roles well enough. And I don't expect most people to be trading in these workshops because a lot of people don't own that many champions. On the purple side, though, they've banned out Garen, which is a little odd to me. I'm assuming they banned it out because they're playing Singed and didn't want to deal with the Garen. Either way, though, it's a somewhat odd ban, and a Morgana Renekton ban. Renekton, I'm starting to ban in solo queue just because he is one of the biggest lane bullies top lane, and Morgana is becoming a really issue at a real issue as a support, just constantly not letting you dive in, not letting you lock down anyone that you would expect. Their picks are then Gragas mid, Singed top, Lucian Thresh bot lane, and Vi jungle. So a much more meta-centered build, team comp on purple team. Singed is slightly out of the ordinary, but he's still, like, you expect him to go top. You don't necessarily expect to see a Volibear support. My concern is that Volibear is actually pretty good as a support in terms of a kill lane. He can run right at you, make you waste CC, pull you into the team, lock you down, do crazy damage. That's all well and good. But pairing that with a Vayne seems a little odd. I would pair that with, like, a Draven, a Graves if you really wanted to play that style of, like, burst AD carry. I don't know. I just... It seems an odd pairing to put it with a Vayne.
Right. Vi is an excellent jungler, though. They did hit her with nerfs, but I am a little optimistic about the Vi pick. They do have a team comp that can murder the carry if necessary. So I'm interested to see how that works out. If Vi, Singed, Lucian, Thresh, Gragas can all get on Vayne, Volibear might be a pick just to sit by Vayne's side in late game. Although I feel, and since Leona was banned out, that might be the thought process there.
For sure. That being said, though, their peel is pretty bad on blue team. Like, Volibear can peel a little bit. He has the exhaust, he has the flip, and he has the slow from his E. Pantheon has a brief stun, but usually he's using it as an engage rather than disengage. Olaf has his axes to slow, and Kha'Zix has, like, his minor slows. So they have no hard disengage. If Lucian gets fed, if Singed gets rolling, if Gragas or Vi or literally anyone on the enemy team is trying to dive in and force a fight, I don't know how well they're going to be able to handle that.
Right, they did hit Vi's cooldowns on her ult, but it's still just the most potent tool in the game for just removing a carry from a fight, especially a short-range carry like Vayne. So this is really going to come down to Vayne's positioning and a purple team ability to catch her out.
For sure. And Thresh Lucian bot is actually really potent because Thresh does a lot of damage on his own early game. They've nerfed it a number of times, but it's still there. I mean, he's a good auto attack harass champion, and his skills do some good damage, and his early kill potential is phenomenal. Lucian, if he gets a full combo, he does a lot of burst as well. You're pairing that up against a Vayne who has a famously weak laning phase. Is not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be, but if she's ever caught, it just boils back to the where's your peel, how are you protecting this Vayne? And
right.
I think purple team, everything about their team comp seems like they're going to be able to shut down that Vayne on
Lucian
every stage of the game.
A very forgiving champion. He has the short range dash. He has an ultimate that if he misses it is not the end of the world, etc.
It's also worth pointing out that Lucian dash removes all slows on your champion. So let's say Volibear does flip him into the team and uses his roar. That's a slow. That's your only thing keeping him in range. Boom. Cleanse the slow, run away, you're good to go.
Right, so you have a very forgiving champion who, even if blue team manages to get their slows off, their meager peel off, Lucian should be able to escape relatively unscathed. So we'll see how that turns out in team fights. For
sure. Now, we're seeing both AD carries starting Doran's Blade, really standard. The only difference is that we're seeing the Volibear go for Relic Shield. I just call it Tarragon's because that's the upgraded item. I kind of like that because it's going to provide some healing over to Vayne. When you use those charges, it heals yourself, it heals your AD carry, and it gives both of you the gold. I like that choice. And the Doran's Shield start on Thresh does not make sense to me. And the reason being, Doran's Shield was nerfed in terms of regen. Now you pick it if you're blocking auto attacks. If you're versus, like, Caitlyn. If you're versus someone like Lulu. If you're versus someone like Karma, Annie. Anyone who's going to be constantly pelting you with auto attacks, that's when you pick Doran's Shield these days. It's not a terrible choice. I mean, it's still an okay starting item. But I don't know. You could have gone Ruby Crystal if you wanted the really, really early Sightstone. I'm seeing some supports start to do that a little bit more often. You could have gone for your Gold Pretend at level 1, or hell, you could have even gone for a full consumable start if you wanted like that level 1 pink ward protecting the red. I was a fan of that at the very, very beginning of the season before a lot of the Gold Pretend items were so overpowered, and when counter jungling was so popular. I don't know if I would really be able to justify doing a full reversal on my decision not to build it and just like go fully back to that, but it is something for him to consider. It is an option.
Speaking of starting items, we're seeing that Kha'Zix started with a longsword. We've seen ADC start longsword before, but never an assassin mid, and I still have problems with that pick for generally the same reasons. Yes, it does build into a Vamp Scepter, but you're not getting any sustain from it, you're not getting any survivability off of it, and against a mobile opponent like Gragas, I don't think that extra damage will translate into a real advantage in lane.
For sure. Now, it's very early in the lane, so I can't comment on it too much, but I want to point out that Gragas is using his barrels for wave clear at level 1. He took about 3/4 of his own mana just trying to shove the wave versus Kha'Zix. And I don't know if I would agree with that, because Kha'Zix wants that early engage. He wants to jump on your face and fight. They did nerf Gragas' early scaling on his body slam, so it's not like he has that incredibly potent melee range trading potential at level 2 and 3 like he used to. I would have saved the barrels, walked up and auto attack, like last hit things with auto attacks, and then anytime they tried to trade, do a point blank barrel auto attack combo. And that's going to reduce his attack speed and provide for some pretty potent trading potential. We see Volibear trying to go in with the flip, not able to get onto Lucian, so instead he swaps over to Thresh, and we see he is taking a huge amount of punishment in return. This is exactly what we would expect. His cost of engage is just so very high. Unfortunately, we did miss the early first blood here. I'm going to actually rewind and just see what set it up. Looks like Pantheon is able to loop in behind just a little bit. He's very patient. He does not rush his skills and waits for Gragas to use the body slam, then stuns, follows up with quick spears for first blood. We then see Vi going top. She started with a sweeper and clears the ward. They know you're there when you clear that ward. So honestly, I don't like the level 1 sweeper starts on a lot of jungles right now. I prefer the warding totem and then swap it out once you're like level 6 or so. The extra little bit of ward coverage can help save your laners. It'll help you secure your buffs a little bit easier if you're at all worried about counter jungling. And I like it a little bit more. We do see Sin shoving up very, very hard, and he is out of mana as a result. I'm interested to see if he tries to turn this into a free buy by just like shoving in and going back, or if he is going to stay this pressed up, in which case he's going to need to watch out for a Pantheon gank.
Right. Pantheon is still just a totally lethal ganker, especially when he does hit 6. On the other hand, Singed is playing very confidently. I was watching his top lane early on. When Olaf runs at him, he knows when to flip and let the poison tick away and when to skedaddle. So we're seeing someone very comfortable with his champion. So we'll see whether he's able to translate that into some sort of early advantage. Pantheon is coming up. There is the ward. Singed does see it. Pantheon jumps on him. Is throwing spears, lots of damage, but Singed manages to get away with a little help from his slow.
Yeah, now, he did use his ghost, so that is a cooldown to keep an eye on, but in the long term, I just don't think they have enough lockdown to really stop Singed from getting away, as long as he has his summoners up.
Right, Singed is low on mana, but to get a burst of poison gas off does not drain his resources that much. Meanwhile, we're seeing Olaf is low on both mana and health, so Singed, I believe, is just going to try to bully him around, pick up some farm, drink from his flask, and stay top as long as possible.
For sure. Now, not something we see that often in the workshop games. We see Vi going in and just stealing away the wraiths. She does leave one small wraith so that they're not going to respawn until Pantheon clears them. I like that decision, and it's something I would like to see more of in these workshop games. Pantheon tries for another gank mid. Gragas has his... He actually didn't have a ward down. He just sort of expected it coming and just body slams away.
Right,
Singed already using his teleport back up top. Now, they did change that, so teleporting to a tower is much lower cooldown. You're not as punished for using it just to get back into lane. And I expect to see it start to be taken on even more top laners. We have seen recently a lot of top laners take it, but I think it's going to gain in popularity even more.
I really like that change, as top lane is kind of so distant from the rest of the game that having a way to get into fights and meet up with the rest of the team will really be welcome, I think. So again, we see Singe just bullying Olaf. Olaf flashes to get away from what may not have been a kill, but generally a very aggressive attack from Singed. Singe just continues to push. He has no wards, so he's being very cocky here. We'll see whether his ability with the champion is worth being that cocky, or if he ends up regretting it.
For sure. I really like how Singed is playing, though, in terms of just countering this Olaf. He's doing a really good job of just laying down the pain every time he tries to farm, every time he tries to move up and get anything accomplished. It just looks really good in how he's playing. You see Vi going for another counter jungle, and this time Pantheon catches her out just a little bit. A little bit of damage trade, Vi takes some pain, but not really going to be enough to send her back to base or be much of an issue. Blue is about to spawn, so I'm expecting that to go over to Gragas, and I want to see then, with his level 6, with his blue, what he does with that. Is he going to roam? Is he going to go for kills? Pantheon actually coming in onto Gragas. Gragas able to body slam and then ult backwards. He's not going to take blue, though. They're just going to give that over to Vi.
Like you said earlier, we don't see a lot of counter jungling in workshop games, and generally that's something that happens in low elo a lot, where the junglers just waltz through their own jungle with no opposition or team support, which means counter jungling is a really viable tool that just isn't really touched at lower rankings. So it's really interesting in the workshop game to see someone who's aware of starving the enemy jungler. Especially because we could see, for instance, skirmishes in the jungle, we could see people defending large buffs and so on, objective control that isn't centered around Dragon or Baron. So I'm interested to see whether this heightened awareness of counter jungling and so on continues to last during the game.
For sure, and as a counter note to that, I will also want to see how they try and protect the jungle. I'm a huge fan, as you guys know if you watch my stream, I'm a huge fan of mid laners buying an early pink ward and using it to defend the allied jungle. Usually I place it right behind the red buff if I'm on blue side, and if I'm on purple side, same thing, but on the other side of the jungle. Always in behind red buff. That gives you good coverage of them trying to roam up to the other lanes. I sort of missed it. I did get down for the last little split second here. Volibear, just acting as a giant meat shield, is able to get onto Lucian and just pick him off real quickly with Vayne's help. And we see this exact same thing top, where Singe is just constantly pushing with no wards. Pantheon, free gank for him. And at this point, they do have enough damage, because Pantheon has got his first buy, so they're able to just lock them down just long enough in order to get a kill.
Right, Singed is being very confident here, and he does have a CS lead on Olaf. He still does have a very small lead due to Olaf getting the assist and not the kill. But if he continues to be cocky and have no wards, he's going to lose that advantage real quick. And Olaf is a terror right now, so Singed does have to be careful not to get a little too arrogant.
For sure. We see Lucian and the Thresh going on to the Volibear. They're able to pick up a quick kill. Vi comes in behind, gets onto Vayne. Vayne flash goes down, ult happens, but I would honestly expect... Okay, there's the Q. I was waiting on the condemn. I was waiting to see if Vayne was going to be able to pull it off, but at that point Lucian was able to catch up.
Volibear dived, and that's what really set up that 2-for-0 exchange. And I just really don't like diving in bot lane when you have so many points of access for the jungler, and when you have two people there. Diving is risky in any lane, but in bot lane it's so much more dangerous. I really dislike seeing it.
This Gragas is having so many issues with Pantheon. When I first looked at mid, Pantheon showed up, Gragas threw a barrel, then flashed away. He then turned around and tried to fight Pantheon, then backed up. Then came back to try and fight Pantheon as Kha'Zix showed up in lane. And at that point, well, you've already wasted all your cooldowns. You've tried 3 different engagers onto this Pantheon, and now you're in a 1v2. So I don't know, I can't judge Gragas' gameplay too harshly. It's not as though he's technically doing anything wrong. It's just he can't seem to make up his mind of whether he wants to fight or whether he wants to run. And if you're not going to engage on a fight, then don't fight.
I see someone asking, yes, I'm a woman. do have a nasally voice, but, you know, totally a lady.
Kha'Zix comes in behind this time, and yet another kill onto Singed. The fact that Singed is not warded after all of these ganks onto him makes me concerned. At this point, he's been ganked by the jungle about 3, maybe even 4 times, and now the enemy mid laner is just coming up and killing him. And if he's not going to respond to that, then he's going to fall further and further and further behind. You can't just suicide split push anymore. That just doesn't work. They've nerfed it many times.
There are 2 or 3 points that he could be warding. He could be warding his river bush, his tri-bush, and if he really wants to keep shoving, he could even ward around Baron, that sort of junction. Instead, he's just shoving. He's completely blind. Again, he's coming to lane with 1 ward and his trinket. Mm-hmm. So I'm really concerned about his presence in top lane, whether he'll keep getting shoved out.
For sure. Now, at this point, Olaf has placed a few wards. Personally, if you're going to ward the tri-bush, why also ward the river bush then? I would ward down closer to the Baron, so you get better coverage of all access points to the river, and you get much more warning. Because you are going to be dealing with some jumpy champions. You have Vi, who has pretty long range for her dash and her ult, and you have Gragas, who has body slam. So they can approach relatively quickly if you're warding that close to yourself.
Right, they did hit the cooldown on Vi's ult in lower levels, but it's still extremely lethal in long range, so you really need that ward coverage. And here we're seeing Olaf has an XP advantage on Singed, has really caught up in gold. I believe they're about even now with the assists on Olaf, despite being about 15 CS behind, and he's just really dishing out damage onto Singed, and Singed has less and less recourse every time Olaf goes in.
For sure. And the Spectre's Cowl is making a huge difference right now. It's pretty standard to rush some of those items, especially for versus an AP champion, but the fact that he's done it makes me very, very happy. The regen it gives you every single time you get hit by a spell is phenomenal versus any sort of a dot champion, Teemo, Singed, anyone along those lines. In the meantime, we see Purple Team going for a quick dragon, and Kha'Zix instead going up top lane. I really like that decision to just say, okay, we're having some issues bot lane. Lucian has been able to pick up some kills, but so has Vayne. And going even with the Vayne in farm and kills is not generally what you want to be doing.
Here we're seeing Kha'Zix goes in on Singed, doesn't quite get the kill, but he's still forced out of lane. His ult is gone, his ghost is gone, and that means that Olaf is going to be able to catch up again, close the gold advantage, and every time Singed returns to lane, he's a little weaker, a little less ahead. And Olaf is not a champion you want to gamble with. He's not a champion you want to take your foot off his throat. So I'm really concerned about Purple's top lane right now.
Pantheon ulting mid in behind Gragas. Kha'Zix tries to cut him off a little bit. They get a lot of damage onto him. I would expect him to be getting taken down here. Kha'Zix able to finish it off with a quick Q. Back top lane though, Kha'Zix could have easily got that kill onto Singed, but he cancelled his auto attack thinking he'd secured it, and then just like jumped out.
Looking at Gragas' items, another kill on goes to Olaf. He picks it up on Vi. Looks like Singed is going to polish him off though. Olaf running away. Just one flank is all it takes, but he just can't get in range. Olaf has that slight speed advantage and manages to escape. See, we're seeing what happens when you let Olaf thrive, even a little bit. He's managing to pick up kills on the jungler when they come up for a gank. He manages to survive through Singed's aggression, and that's really going to continue to get worse and worse for Purple Team as the game goes on.
A compliment to Purple Team's ward coverage bot lane. They actually just got 4-man ganked, and the pink ward in the top bush, the ward they had on Dragon, which just expired, and the one bot lane, caught every single person on the enemy team out, and they were able to just use the Thresh Lantern, disengage, not fight, and as a result, they are not going to get taken down. I am surprised, though, no one is checking this bush. This is an incredibly common pink ward spot, and you need to be clearing pink wards as quickly as possible.
We're seeing that even though that blue team has 7 kills, the gold advantage is not that large. It's a 2k gold advantage. Considering that they're 7 kills ahead, you'd think it would be larger. But Purple team is staying in this game through farm, through objectives, so they're really not as... the situation isn't as dire as the scoreboard might have you believe.
Oh, unfortunate alt mid lane. Gragas knocks him out of range instead of into range.
A note about Gragas's items. He had a needlessly large rod and a blasting wand. It looked like he was about to rush Deathcap, and then I suppose he saw the folly of that and switched out to a Rylai's instead.
I'm not a fan of Rylai's on Gragas, honestly. If I were him, get your Athenes early, then your Void Staff Deathcap. Like, that's the standard build on him. And building a Rylai's on Gragas is not going to give you that much of an advantage. Your skills are all AoE, and AoE does not proc it very much. It's like, what, 15% slow? I think. I could be wrong on that. But either way, it's massively reduced if it's AoE. So just not really worth it, I don't think. Looks like Singed is going to be taken down. Olaf using the ult to make sure that he does not get CC'd. Final Reckless Swings goes in. And Vi, in turn, though, should be able to get this. Pantheon, no, is going to ult in. And this is going to be Vi in trouble now. Very good job on blue team.
Built a Spectral Wraith, and I'm really not a fan of that decision at all. Especially since they've hit her survivability a little, and they've hit her ability to be tanky and build damage at the same time with the most recent set of nerfs. Ancient Golem is a much better choice. It gives you CDR, it gives you survivability, and Spectral Wraith just, I don't think it's worth the money. And when you're 0 and 3, you really don't want to be a bruiser on Vi.
Yeah, I still see a lot of Vi's going damage, and it's a good option, but you need someone beefy on your team. And unfortunately, Singed hasn't been able to do that yet. He's going Rod of Ages build, so that's going to take a very long time to stack up. He's doing Rod of Ages Tier Goddess, so he's not going to be exactly beefy here. Gragas is going for the Rylai's Rush, which, again, I don't agree with, but it is going to make him slightly tanky. I don't know, it's just no one on their team seems quite beefy enough in order to justify no defensive items on your jungle.
I think we're seeing a lack of communication here. I think each tanky member of the team is individually saying, well, we have a Vi or we have a Singed, so they will go tanky and I can build damage. And so all of them are just building straight damage.
I'm also not a fan of Vi taking every single blue buff. I mean, yes, Gragas is having some issues, but if I were playing in this game, I would be saying to them, hey, you should probably be getting some mana regen, like Athenes might be a good item, Chalice might be a good item. Offering some communication with your team. If they don't listen to you, if they rage, fine, whatever. You did your job, you communicated as best as you could. At that point, if they rage, just mute them, be done with it, move on. And if they are having issues with like getting camped, if they're having issues with feeding, denying them extra resources is fine as long as you're able to use those resources effectively. And Vi is 0-3. It's not as though she's doing much better in terms of like influence on the game than Gragas is. So why deny a mana-hungry champion blue buff and CDR? I don't know, it just seems a little odd. Now she's going to get collapsed on at the enemy blue buff, and Gragas is coming in. Pantheon ult in behind, though. I honestly don't see this going well for Purple Team.
Just a quick note, Singed does have 20 CS on Olaf, but we're seeing that Olaf is now 3, 0, and 2, and Olaf is just throwing axes, collapsing on Gragas. And we're seeing really Singed gambled in top lane. He gambled that he could be aggressive and out-farm and maybe die a couple of times, but get enough of an advantage that it would be worth it. And that gamble has not paid off. You're seeing Olaf is becoming a total beast right now. Pantheon has been able to just gank whenever he can and get some gold off that and so on.
I want to address what Purple Team and Blue Team just did here. Vi tried to counter jungle. She got caught out. Gragas then tried to defend Vi. Vi and Gragas run completely opposite directions. Gragas gets picked off. Vi then stays in her jungle at red buff saying, oh no, they're going to take my red buff. We need to stop this. But now you're 1v3. Like, it's not as though they blew a lot of cooldowns on the enemy team. All they really blew was the Pantheon ult. Everything else is still up. They can still fight you easily. So then Singed comes down, and again, they run opposite directions from each other, get isolated and picked off by themselves. So that's just them throwing away advantages because they don't want to fall behind. And that's a big mistake you see in lower elos, where they say, oh my god, if we don't fight right now, we're going to lose my red buff. Yes, but if you fight, there's like an 80 or 90% chance that you're going to die. Everyone who's involved is going to die, and you're still going to lose your red buff. So at that point, you need to cut your losses. You need to get the hell out. You need to buy your whatever items you can. You need to reestablish some map control and try and make some other plays happen. And yes, we have already commented on the Rylai's Rush just not being good on Gragas. Rylai's in general on Gragas is just not that fantastic.
Right. We're seeing right now why picking champs that are strong in the meta is not as good as picking champs you're comfortable with. We're seeing, for instance, Vi is a very strong pick in the meta, very contested, very banned very often, and yet she's not able to make anything happen on this champion.
She's not been able to land really any ganks this game. She did get an ult down bot, but her team was nowhere near close enough to follow up. And that is something you always have to keep in mind. It's sort of the range of response. How close is your team, and can they respond to your actions? Best case scenario, if they respond immediately, if they respond in the appropriate way to your play that you're trying to pull off, what is going to happen? And unfortunately, with the way Vi has been playing here, the best case scenario is I blow some cooldowns and I don't die. Because there's no one to follow up, and she doesn't have the damage, she doesn't have the tankiness to win most of the fights that she's trying to engage for her team, but her team's nowhere near.
She's also picking up a Brutalizer after her Elder Lizard, which means she's just continuing to be a bruiser to go damage, and I'm really not a fan of that decision. I can understand going Elder Lizard over Ancient Golem, but to have Boots 1 and a Brutalizer is just really compounding on her earlier mistakes, I think.
A very nice 4-man gank bot lane here. Pantheon ults in behind. Kha'Zix then cuts them off from that side. Volibear leading with his exhaust, which does get removed by the Lucian dash. But in the long term, though, they just have very good positioning on blue team. They're all collapsing from the right angles. They're all on the same page, so that indicates to me that they're communicating well. And as a result, they're just able to pick up kill after kill after kill. And at this point, they have snowballed about a 4,000 to 5,000 gold advantage, which is pretty significant considering we're only about 23 minutes into this match.
We're also seeing Kha'Zix is just getting really far ahead. Has a 4.07 score right now, and he picked up Mobo Boots so he can continue to help out all around the map.
Red team's turret has been destroyed.
It still concerns me that, again, we've talked about Gragas' build, he can do what he likes. But the fact that he's losing to a Kha'Zix in farm, that is troubling. Because if built properly, Gragas should be one-shotting caster minions by, I believe it's about level 7 or 8. He doesn't even need the final point in his Q in order to one-shot them. So it's not as though he's being zoned from farm, he just doesn't seem to be able to get any. And that is very, very troubling. If you're not getting those CS, you're just going to fall further and further behind. You're not going to have the influence you really want to have. Purple team is able to secure a kill onto Olaf, but now I think they're just both going to get taken down by this very beastly Kha'Zix.
Right, both Vi and Sin chased very deep, and Olaf had enough survivability that he could just chase all the way down to his inner turret, at which point his team could swing around, and I really love Blue Team's communication, and I love their teamwork. They saw that their ally was going down, and their response was to swing around and pick up the kill, as opposed to just pursuing their own objectives or getting more farm for themselves, etc.
And looking at Gragas here, he's so terrified of this Pantheon that he flashes away before he's ever in range, because of course he doesn't want to get stunned, and that's understandable. But he's just so terrified to ever trade or fight anyone. So as a result, again, you're going to keep falling behind. He does have his Chalice now, so he's going to have at least a little bit of mana. The blue buff still goes in, Flash comes out, but he is going to get taken down probably by Lucian here. Good kill over onto him, because blue buff on Lucian is actually really, really good. Having that extra CDR and mana will, not exponentially, but it will greatly, greatly increase your damage. He is kind of a caster. So if you're not landing skills, then you're not getting double auto attacks. You're not getting those little mini crits. You're not getting the artificial increased attack speed.
I just want to congratulate Purple's bot lane. Their team is behind, but both Lucian and Thresh have been playing quite well and really doing their best considering the circumstances. That being said, when you have Lucian being a team's great hope against a Vayne, that's troubling. Lucian is a lane bully, and he is an early game sort of champion. So Purple team does not have a lot of late game scaling right now.
So Dragon has respawned, and we've talked about timers a lot throughout the various workshop games. I'm interested to know if either team has bothered to keep a timer here and how they're going to react to that respawn. It looks as though purple team just wants to push mid. They're saying, okay, let's just jump in here and take some global gold for us. As a response, Volibear pulls them back into the tower and Pantheon ults on top. Boom, free kill for them. Now at this point, they can either chase now that Vayne is coming in from the side, or they can just sort of break off and go do their own thing. In this case, chasing is going to be incredibly free kills for them. I cannot see purple team getting any kills in this fight. Now Kha'Zix is here. That is a free team fight. He is so fed at this point. He's 717. He is a Hydra and a Bloodthirster. A little bit overkill on the lifesteal, but like that is a crazy amount of damage. Pantheon is now cycling that into a free dragon. Anytime you get a numbers advantage, taking a free objective will just... It will multiply that smaller advantage you just received. Oh, we got a kill? Great, that's a couple hundred gold. But unless you do something with it, you're not actually closer to winning the game by much.
We're also seeing Mobo Boots really pay off on Kha'Zix. We've talked a lot about how they've been nerfed and they're not the mandatory pick that they once were on some champions. However, he's really using the strengths of Mobo Boots where he's constantly where he needs to be. When someone's pushed, he's there. When there's a team fight breaking out, he's there. And with his leap, the loss of in-combat movement really isn't hurting them that much.
For sure. I would like to point out that we have a little bit of tankiness coming out from Singed now. He has rushed a Thornmail. I like it in the fact that the enemy team is all AD, but Thornmail without any extra health, without any extra stats, is a little lackluster. It's not a bad item. I feel it's actually undervalued and more people should be building it. But if you don't have the stats to back it up, great, you returned a little bit of damage on about 5 auto attacks and then you died. Like, you kind of need the health to make it work.
There's also the issue that will people really be focusing Singed in team fights? Will they be using their auto attacks on him to get the damage return? Or will they be focusing Lucian? Will they be focusing Gragas? And so on.
We see the Vi ult go down onto Vayne. Vayne is able to get killed for by her team. We had some concerns in the pregame about how they're going to be able to protect this Vayne. And at this point, Vayne is positioning very well. She's not getting caught out, and as soon as that ult went down, she just went back into her team, said, hey guys, someone's jumping in, let's stop this. And then as soon as that ult was finished, then she tumbled away, created some distance for herself, and was able to pump out a significant amount of damage. In the meantime, the rest of her team is fairly fed and are able to just sort of clean this fight up. Again, I want to see objectives coming from these fights, whether it's towers or whether it's Baron. Honestly, with the fed Kha'Zix, the Vayne, I feel they should be doing Baron right now. Instead, they're opting to take the inner mid turret, and that is an important turret. It gives a lot of map pressure, a lot of map vision for your team. But they could have easily taken a Baron before Lucian and Thresh were able to respawn.
We've talked about Vi's item builds before, and the most recent team fight was an excellent example about why that's just not working out for her. She ulted in, and then she just exploded.
Now, if they are going to do this Baron, I want to see more warding coming out first. They dropped a quick ward in the little cross bush here by the enemy red. And that's a great ward, but if you don't have warding in behind the red and Baron, if you don't have it in the approaches to Baron, then you're going to get collapsed on very easily, and that could turn the fight in the enemy team's favor. You don't want to take risks when doing Baron, you do it when it's a sure thing.
It looks like they were trying to bait out a Baron as opposed to actually taking it, and it's working out for them. They managed to take down Singed. Pantheon is about to... No, Pantheon actually cancelled his ult. He's sticking with the team, which is a good choice, I feel. But now that they have 2 deaths, Vi and Singed, it looks like they are going to swing around for Baron now, and they are warding the bush behind Baron and a couple of the choke points.
For sure. And exactly what you said was going to happen before. Vi is not tanky enough to join these fights. Her team is not in range, she's diving in, and instantly is melted. Once you've ulted, you're then in a 1v5. If you don't have the tankiness to survive and put out utility, you better hope that your team is in range to follow up on that fight, and that they're far enough ahead that you being dead after you've used one skill is not going to lose them the fight. And that's just not the case here.
Right, Vi has not even 2,000 health, and Singed is sitting at just above 3,000 health with a little bit of armor. Neither of them are really able to soak up any damage. Singe is purple team's only real tank, and he's still going down.
We mentioned earlier the teleport changes and how they reduce the cooldown when you teleport to a tower. Singe just teleported to a minion right outside his tower range. So that bothers me a little bit. It's not like, oh my god, such a bad play, but it's something to consider. It's those small advantages that can be snowballed and can make differences in certain games. So that's something for him to just keep in the back of his mind.
So we're seeing Vi's second item was a cleaver, so that does have a little bit of health on it, but ultimately it's still not a very tanky pick. It's a damage item above all else.
And it's also there to shred armor, so that the rest of your team can do more damage. The only person doing physical damage is Lucian.
Also, Vi isn't staying in fights long enough to get 3 stacks of her W off, or even get, a bunch of cleaver hits in. As soon as she goes in, she dies.
But even in its best case scenario where they completely ignore her and she's getting stacks off, who are you shredding their armor for? Lucian is kind of backline, just throwing out ults, throwing out a few skills, and trying not to get instantly popped by Kha'Zix. So it's not like he can really attack the same targets that Vi is, unless Vi is now the peeler, and that's not the role she usually wants to be in. We do see a fight coming out here. Blue team, they actually take Vayne very low. But in the long term, though, no one from blue team is going to go down, and they're going to pick up 2 free kills. Just 2 for 0, quick trades. They are going to cycle down. It looks like Pantheon's going to pick up this farm. I would like to see them heal really quickly, and then try and do a split push. I would like to see a 3-1-1 split, because they're so far ahead. They can send Kha'Zix alone to a lane. No one can duel Kha'Zix at this point. I would like to see them send Olaf to another solo lane, because no one can duel Olaf at this stage of the game. And then you have Vayne, Pantheon, and Volibear sieging up another lane. You're not necessarily going to be able to take anything with that because Vayne is so low range, but you have all of your peel still centered around the Vayne. You're trying to say, hey, if you want to fight me, go for it, and the rest of my team will collapse in from the side.
Someone is asking what's snowballing in Twitch chat. Snowballing is when you have, it can be either good or bad. Generally, it's when one small thing begets a larger advantage or disadvantage. So you run into lane and you immediately die. Your opponent just begins to kill you over and over with the 300 gold they get from that. That's snowballing.
A good example would be like, let's say I'm playing a champion who, if I get one item or a couple kills, I do a lot of damage. LeBlanc is a great example of that, where if LeBlanc gets ahead, her damage is ridiculous. She does crazy amounts if she's able to land her combo. So it would be like LeBlanc getting a level 1 kill on your jungler. So now you're versus a double buffed LeBlanc. That is a huge advantage for her. Snowballing would be her turning that into a even larger advantage, turning those double buffs, turning that early experience advantage into a kill on your mid laner, then roaming bot, taking another double kill, then going top lane, killing your top laner, then taking your extra buffs. So yeah, that would be snowballing, where you're taking a smaller advantage and turning it into a larger one by having the initial advantage.
Yep, it comes from a snowball rolling down a hill and just picking up more snow and becoming larger as it goes. I pay 20k for an English major so that I can have, insights like that.
Exactly. So I believe Brian is doing the matchmaking for the next room now. If you get an invite from Felvric, please accept it. That is the next workshop game forming.
So right now, blue team is they're shoving mid.
They're still not doing any sort of a split push or trying to force numbers advantages. They're not really forcing any objectives. They're just sort of doing the, hey, let's ARAM, we're stronger strategy, which I am so not a fan of. I hate seeing it in solo queue, and in a somewhat organized event like this, it makes me even more sad. We see Kha'Zix split pushing bot a little bit, and we see Pantheon ulting in from the side, but in the long term, I just don't know how well it's going to work for them. I mean, yeah, they're so far ahead, they are going to get some kills here, they are going to get an advantage, but are they going to turn it into towers? Are they going to turn it into barons when it respawns in 2 minutes?
Just a quick note, I just really appreciate Vayne's mechanics here. For instance, Singed ran into her face, or was flipped into her face by Volibear, and she condemned him into a broken tower. So I'm not sure what it is with Vayne's and workshops. They're always very spot on with their mechanics. But I just wanted to point that out.
For sure. Now, unfortunately, that split went against them, and the reason being is they tried to fight while split. You don't fight while split push. You try and force numbers. So you send 3 mid. Okay, they want to try and fight us. Just run away. And in the meantime, your bot lane is pushing, your top lane is pushing. You're getting something else on the map. You're a distraction. That's all it's supposed to be. You don't fight when you're split up unless you've made a pick, unless you've caught someone out in a bunch of CC and burst them down. And honestly, the only person who should be making picks on this team would be like a Kha'Zix, because he's got the damage. He's got... How much AD does he have? 410 AD on him. But now he's caught out. He's 1v4. He is able to just jump over the wall, though, so nothing really going to come of it.
Right. I feel like evolving Leap on Kha'Zix has always been mandatory, because without it, his mobility is so poor.
I appreciate the little bit of tanky stats that he's built on Kha'Zix. It's actually going to serve him really, really well in these fights, and we're seeing it come into play. Olaf is going to be taken down. I would expect Kha'Zix, though, to just run. Like, I don't know why he's still trying to fight this. In the meantime, I want to see their team accomplishing something on the map. Instead, they're going in behind. Vayne has Guardian Angel, though, but again, look at where she is. She's completely cut off from her team. There's no one here peeling for her. They need to stop walking into the meat grinder and just end the game.
I think the overwhelming theme of this game has been hubris. Singed shoving top with no wards up. Hubris. Blue team has a massive advantage and runs into the meat grinder. Hubris.
For sure.
People should try to be playing smart no matter what their advantage are. We see a lot of people get a few kills and they think they're invincible, or they get a GA and they think they can 1v5, and a lot of games get dragged out or even thrown because of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I just really want to see them split pushing effectively. And that's just not a skill that we can really explain that easily over just like a workshop environment, besides just saying, like, send people to this lane and don't fight. Send someone to this lane and have them push. I mean, honestly, if you've watched any sort of competitive events, they'll talk about rotations and split push and cycling. That is all very, very important strategies for any level of gameplay. And honestly, it's how you win games.
Ultimately, what I think I would like to see more out of Blue Team is dynamic warding. So, for instance, when they're in lane, they will ward choke points. But what I'd like to see is, for instance, when Kha'Zix is split pushing bot, for him to put a couple of wards into where the enemies will be coming from. When you have the trinket ward, there's really no excuse not to have vision and choke points when you're alone.
And if he's not going to ward, he's going to continue to get caught out like this. It hasn't cost him too much. He's only died once this game. But his team is dying for him, because he's saying, oh crap, I don't want this fight. So he runs away, and then his team just sort of walks into the meat grinder, as we've said so many times, and dies. Vayne, I want to stay on Baron, because they can take this very, very quickly with her damage. Instead, she's a little bit preoccupied with fighting this Singed. They are able to... No, wait. They get it with the
And here we see
barrel.
hubris again. Spain turns around, tries to kill Singed, who has a thorn mail and is singed. And because of that distraction, because Blue Team is torn between taking down Baron and skirmishing with Purple, Purple gets the Baron.
It is worth pointing out that Gragas is one of the best Baron threats in the game, and the reason being is that his barrel does more than Smite. It does more damage than Smite, so if he times it at the exact right time, it's not a miss Smite at that point, it's a... he just timed it properly.
Right. I believe if Vayne was not chasing down Singed, Blue Team would have had a better chance at taking Baron there.
For sure, they should have been able to. They also, I mentioned earlier, you don't do Baron unless you have wards, and they didn't have any in the enemy jungle. They weren't able to protect their own objectives. They weren't able to secure themselves, essentially. You see Volibear just sort of whacking away on Singed. Doesn't really do much, but now there is a 3v1, and that's going to be a very dead Singed if they play this remotely properly. They're just going to keep him in the turret as long as they can, continue stunning him, continue slowing him, and there you go. There's the Vayne kill.
Closing out games is, I believe, the thing that is the most common problem against across all workshop games, is that people simply don't know how to close out games.
And it is such a difficult thing to really explain, because you have to play it responsively to how the enemy team is playing. You can't just say, this is how you close out games, and like a 1, 2, 3 steps. That's not how it works. You have to be saying, hey, look, they're in this position, we need to take this objective because of this. It's all very, very reactive. Now we see 4 pacing top. Kha'Zix is going for the inhib, Vayne's going back, Volibear's pushing mid alone. Like, they need to make something happen with that. That is a huge numbers advantage. He's tanking this for ages. He's picking up ults, he's picking up CC, he's picking up summoner skills. They need to make something happen with that.
Ultimately, you see Olaf has a sweeper, but he also has an empty slot. I'd like to see some wards in there, first of all. Then, secondly, when he's shoving top, he could have put a couple of wards, for instance, in the bush next to red, not the red bush, but the one across from there. He would have seen Vi coming up, and he would have been able to skedaddle and keep the merry chase going for a little bit longer. Maybe blow a couple more ultimates. Just the
For
lack
sure.
of warding is very surprising to me, coming out from both teams.
So we see Pantheon just flashing back out. Again, their team is not grouped up. They're not fighting as a team, and that it just makes me so sad because they had this game in the bag. They had every possibility of just steamrolling over and ending the game, and they're just choosing not to do so.
So, for instance, you talk a lot about the 4-1 split as the ideal
It's the
pushing
simplest.
configuration. The simplest. So basically, for instance, for the 4-1 split, you would have everyone but, say, Kha'Zix or
Pantheon would be the likely choice because he has his ult to rejoin. Alternatively, you could use Olaf or you could use Kha'Zix because they're both very, very good at dueling. Singed would be the sort of standard from the other team because he has teleport and because he's fantastic at running away and split pushing. So, honestly, there's so many champions on these teams that could be split pushing, and they're doing so now a little bit, but their team's not responding appropriately. I would want to see, I would say Pantheon, Volibear, Kha'Zix, and Vayne sitting mid lane. They would not fight, they would not do anything until Olaf approaches the top lane turret. He needs to push all the way in, he needs to ward cover as he goes, so that he doesn't get fully collapsed on. As soon as you see one or more person try and stop Olaf, then you fight mid, or you take mid turret. If no one goes top, then Olaf takes a free tower. At that point, it's a lose-lose for purple team, because, hey, we can try and fight a team that can just disengage really, really quickly and not allow us to do anything, or we can lose top tower, or we can lose mid tower. There is no real winning that, assuming blue team does not mess up the split.
right, and that configuration is why Shen was so popular back in the day, is because he could push and then ult in onto a team fight with absolutely no worries.
Exactly. And same with Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate was so strong in competitive scene because he gave global gold to his team. He had great ganking potential from the mid-game onwards, and he could just go split push. If you tried to stop him, he would literally just ult away and be like, yeah, good luck, we now win the team fight mid.
Blue team seems to realize that they need to be taking towers. They just don't seem to know what to do or how to go about taking that.
And they're trying so hard to pressure this mid lane, where, like, you can't dive them. You can't jump in onto the enemy team. They have a Singed, Vi, Thresh, and Gragas. They're going to be able to disengage it or lock you down long enough for you to be dead. So at that point, again, just send someone top. And again, they have 3 people who can do it. Pantheon would be likely because of his ult. Olaf would be likely because of his distraction and tankiness potential. You see Pantheon does try and dive here, and he's absorbing a lot of damage, but look how much damage they're taking in return. They've already lost one member. Vayne is able to take down Vi, but in the long term, Olaf is going to fall in return. So that whole fight goes 2 for 2, and that's with him having used summoners to escape. There we go, yeah, 3 for 2. And that's what happens when you try and turret dive this sort of a team. You don't want to do it.
I just want to give major props to Thresh. I'm not sure if you noticed, Kha'Zix came in first. He was taking tower aggro, and Thresh landed a beautiful hook. He didn't hit Q again to go in. Instead, he just held Kha'Zix in the hook, so Kha'Zix took at least 3 tower shots right to the face, and the rest of purple team collapsed around him.
And then, unfortunately, right after that, Pantheon did the same thing. He was stuck in turret aggro and did not break it. He didn't switch targets. He didn't try and get out to reset aggro. And turrets do increasing damage the more times they hit you in a row. So you want to constantly be juggling that aggro and resetting it. See, now we see the top lane was pushed towards them. If they had not fought, they would have had to go respond to that. And that's why you don't just send 5 people to one lane. It just isn't how you play the game. So that is a Guardian Angel blown from Lucian. I would expect Vayne to be able to get this. Oh, Kha'Zix taken very, very low in the process. So we see Singe teleporting bot lane. He's going to be able to provide a little bit of pressure, but Lucian's dead. The rest of his team is nowhere to be found here. So why are they... oh, crap. Sorry, I had Fog of War set to blue team, not purple. Or both. But yeah, like his team is nowhere in position to really set up a fight right now. So that teleport was kind of wasted. Yes, he brought people bot lane, but the rest of his team needed to immediately Baron, because they sent 3 people to stop him.
Blue team, for most of the game, had a 10k gold advantage. That's been narrowed down to about a 7k advantage. Obviously, that's still pretty massive. But we are seeing purple team is taking advantage of blue team's inability to close out the game. And, you know, Vi has a Randuin's now. Vi has a Glacial Shroud right now, so she's going to be building pretty tanky. A lot of the weaknesses purple team had are now being ironed out because blue team simply can't close.
During this Baron fight, Olaf has decided to go try and backdoor the bot lane turret. I don't know how well that's going to work out for him. It does cancel out the Baron, though, because Vi is going back. I just don't see why he would do that. He's going to take so much damage. You're not going to be able to do much there. And he is taken down by Lucian.
I think we're seeing a very frustrated Olaf right now. I think we're seeing an Olaf who wants to close out the game and feels like his team is not cooperating with him, or he just simply can't make it happen. And he's starting to get a little desperate. He's starting to throw himself at turrets. He's starting to make these somewhat crazy plays in an attempt to close the game out.
Agreed, and it's just not how you want to do things. I get being frustrated at this stage. I've been here, and it is annoying as hell if you just can't seem to close anything out. But throwing the game isn't the way to win, right? Like, he's angry because he can't win the game, so instead he loses the game.
Obviously, that's not his intention, but ultimately...
For sure, but that is the likely outcome if he keeps doing plays like that. And again, that's not an insult towards him. I'm not saying, oh, GG, you're throwing the game. I'm saying that is the likely outcome if you continue to make those decisions.
Especially since Olaf doesn't really have a consistent escape. For instance, if Olaf were Quinn, he could Valor out. I love Quinn so much. I'm taking every opportunity.
Oh my god, these smites. Like, I know Pantheon wasn't there that time, but they are not covering their Baron attempts. Someone could have just stood behind Baron, tanked the ult, and that's a free Baron for you.
Blue team is essentially being a little sloppy. Have you seen, there's this gif of this guy playing Dark Souls, and his character walks up towards a guy and makes the taunt gesture, spreading his arms wide, and the monster turns around and punches him in the face.
That is pretty awesome.
That's essentially blue team right now. They are essentially that guy in Dark Souls making the taunt gesture, and purple team turns around and goes, LOL, okay.
Yeah, I understand they're getting frustrated. They want to rush things, but you always need to play appropriately to how the game is going. And the decision to do Baron there was very good. But if you're not going to block them trying to steal it, and you don't have a smite with you, and you're not going to use an execute move, I don't know. Volibear should have saved his W to finish it off, honestly. But even outside of that, they just needed to stand between him and Baron.
Lucian has almost 400 farm. I think that's going to be a workshop record if he hits it.
This game is going pretty long, though, so...
Still, it's a workshop record. Don't be hating.
I suppose I'm not allowed to be angry. He's black, I'd be considered racist.
Wow, you just made things weird. Good job.
Yep. I can't say anything negative about Lucian now.
GG, GG. So Vi goes in, and see, we're seeing that Vi manages to survive the initial engage. That was a big criticism we had with her mid-game, is she would ult in and immediately explode. Now she's taking, Vayne shots to the face. She does go down, eventually, but you have Lucian and Singed and the rest of her team just running around and just picking up kills, to the fact where it's one person down on,
The actual positioning that Purple Team did in that fight and how they used their skills was actually really, really good. They fought on top of the Singe slow. Vayne was focused by Vi. They got a lot of lockdown in place and were able to just constantly hit their AoE on the maximum number of people that they could. And honestly, that really is what won them that fight. They could have easily lost that if they just comboed a little bit worse, if they weren't cycling as they should. We see Kha'Zix going in on Gragas. Gragas is getting pretty low, but Singed is here to save him.
So Kha'Zix was shoving top. He took the inner, but then Singed was able to just teleport and cock block him from going any further.
Kha'Zix jumping right onto Lucian. Lucian has the Guardian Angel, so he's just going to take him down.
Lucian is a lane bully, but when he can land all of his spells late game, he's still nothing to sneeze at. And Kha'Zix just learned that the hard way, unfortunately. Thresh and Lucian shoving. Only Volibear is up. Volibear knows he can't go in. He's just sort of dancing around the inhib. He's unable to stop Lucian and Thresh from taking the inhibitor. That's a huge boon for Purple Team. Purple Team now has an inhib down mid lane. That means that they're going to have strong minions shoving, and they're going to have the ability to just continue to take objectives, to continue to split push. Purple Team is really pulling a huge coup here, and they're only 4k behind now from a shocking 10k advantage.
For sure, and the longer the game goes, the less gold means. At this point, everyone is almost full build. Lucian is, of course, is full build because he's almost at 400 CS and 11 kills. I also want to point out he went for a late game Blade of the Ruin King. I kind of like that. It's going to increase his ult damage, but look at the enemy team. He's versus a Volibear. He's also versus an Olaf. He's versus some reasonably tanky targets, and he's also versus a lot of people like a Pantheon who's going to want to jump on his face. So having the Blade of the Ruin King is actually really good for him. I like that decision.
Right, Lucian's core is Bloodthirster and Triforce. Once he has those things, he can kind of be a bit more flexible than some other ADCs.
Pantheon trying to do a essentially point-blank ult. I don't know why he did that. If you're going to use that, you need to jump in behind them.
Maybe he's waiting, he's preparing himself for the changes on PvE, where Pantheon's jump is like an inch.
It's true, he just did a max range Pantheon ult, and nothing happened.
It's not the Grand Skyfall on PvE, it's the OK Skyfall.
No, it's Leapfrog.
So now we're seeing Singed going in. Singed flipping Pantheon. Pantheon is being shoved to the side. He's going in on Lucian, but Lucian has so much lifesteal, so much survivability, he's able to just dance away from him and take him down. Kha'Zix is shoving bottom. Kha'Zix keeps split pushing. We talked about the 4-1 split, and it's just not working out. Kha'Zix just keeps not being there for team fights, and Purple Team is able to mop up.
I feel like he's treating the 4-1 split push as the Bible, because I already said you do it reactively, and you need to be adjusting to where your team is, how the minions are positioned, and trying to make things happen as a result. And unfortunately, it's just not working for him at this point.
Olaf taking lots of damage. Lucian uses the Bork active, and it looks like they're going to be able to clean him up. Maybe not. Olaf's pretty hard to kill. Purple Team doesn't really care. They just swing around to Nexus turrets.
Again, Kha'Zix trying to jump onto a Guardian Angel Lucian. Lucian is able to duel him very easily. The fact that Lucian went that low actually surprised me.
Wow, that is quite a coup. Like, Purple Team was behind from the majority of the game, and they managed to turn it around. I am very shocked and impressed with Purple Team there for keeping their heads up, for not giving up or surrendering, and for turning it around.
Yeah, they did a very, very good comeback. And I understand that it may be frustrating for the enemy team, but that's part of the game. And, yeah, it's just one of those things that you do have to adjust to. I'm going to take a quick look at damage dealt. Oh, wow, Lucian. Oh, lordy, he's at 85,000 damage dealt to champions.
For MVPs, Lucian is the obvious pick for Purple Team. He really carried hard that game. And the true sense of the word. And 411 farm, that is a new workshop record. My god. For blue team, I'd have to say Pantheon was MVP. Unfortunately, Pantheon does fall off late game. But his early game presence was just ridiculous.
Okay, do you want to go over item builds a little bit there?
Sure. So with Vayne, we have Bork, Static Shiv, Berserker's Greaves with Fur. Fur is an interesting choice. I believe that would proc on Condemn, as well as Silver Bolts. Ultimately, I think the flat movement speed would be more reliable, or even Home Guards. I'm not a huge fan of that. They are dropping Fur's price in the next patch, but right now it's a little too expensive. Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Last Whisper, all pretty good choices. A GA might have been a good pick, considering how I believe she had a GA at some point. I believe she must have sold it in the late game.
Your mic just cut out.
Oh, I believe Vayne sold the GA late game. So okay, Olaf is straight tank. He has a Warmogs, Randuins, Ninja Tabby, Spirit Visage, Maw. That all worked out very well for him. He was impossible to kill late game. Kha'Zix has Hydra, Sightstone, Bloodthirster, Cleaver, Maw. I'm really loving the Sightstone. That was
Your mic cut out again.
I don't know why. That's so annoying. I'm also loving the Greater Vision Totem, the Pink Ward Trinket. That's a great pick on him. Captain Enchantment is an odd choice. I would have gone with, again, Home Guards or Flat Movement Speed. Pantheon has Elder Lizard, Randuin's, Cleaver, Home Guard, Spirit Visage, Banshee's Veil. Pretty good build. It kept him alive. It gave him enough damage so that he could be relevant during the game. And then Volibear, Face of the Mountain, Sightstone, Randuin's, Swiftness, Spirit Visage. We're seeing lots of Spirit Visages and Randuin's this game.
They're both pretty good items.
Yep, just surprised to see so many of them. But good items, no complaints. Lucian has Home Guard, Berserker's Greaves, Bork, Triforce, Bloodthirster, Last Whisper, GA. Excellent items. They all solved a problem, and they all gave him the damage he needed to come back and carry, so good choices on Lucian there. Cinch has Frozen Heart, Archangels, Randuins, Swiftness Boots, Rod of Ages, and Thornmail. We discussed his items during the game. I don't have any complaints about them. Thornmail might not have been the best choice, but it was his first defensive item, which was good. Gragas, he rushed a Rylai's. He started rushing in Deathcap and then switched out for a Rylai's. Athenes, picked up his Deathcap and Voice Staff later on, and then Fiendish Codex. I'm not a huge fan of his items. I don't like Rylai's that much on Gragas. He's an AoE mage. The Pimp Cup is good. The Void Staff is good. Deathcap, I would have preferred to see a Zanya's, I think. Or even a DFG. And then Vi has Randuin's, Cleaver, Elder Lizard, Iceborne Gauntlet, Chain Vest. We discussed how we wanted to see her be more tanky early game, and she really turned around and made that happen late game. And then Thresh has Randuin's, Locket of the Iron Solari, Mobo Boots, Sightstone, Zeke's Herald. I don't like the Zeke's Herald. I would have preferred to see an Aegis or something else. That's not a super useful item. And a Talisman of Ascension. And Oracle's Lens, which is upgraded. Besides the Zeke's Herald, pretty standard. No real complaints.